I'm Nedra Knerk, President of Future RGV, and I want to welcome our candidates, our moderator, our timekeeper, and I'll introduce Edward Yeo in a minute, and all you people out there who are watching our candidate forum for the Democratic candidates for Senate District 27. All of you out there on Facebook and later when you're on our website and watching our candidate forums to find out how these people want to serve you if you elect them to the seat of State Senate District 27. So, and that's the important thing. Voters can watch these forums anytime on their Davenport at home, in their office, wherever they have a website, and see what the candidates are saying. So please spread the word that these will be available until Election Day on March 1st. So I do want to thank our sponsors, Rhodes Enterprises, AT&T, Sam Garcia Architect, Frost Bank, IBC Bank, Clark Chevrolet, L&F Distributors, Valley Land Title, Rio Bank, DHR Health, Ernie Williams, and our in-kind sponsors, Copy Zone, Upper Valley Mail Service, and CSL Productions, of which Milo Rodriguez down there is our in-kind sponsor, and he's the one who's taking all of these, doing all the recordings. So thank you down there, Milo. I also want to thank Stephen Wingert and Ryan Henry of AIM Media, and they jointly own the Brownsville Herald and the Monitor, who are helping us with the facilities, their technical facilities, and their expertise. So, and thanks too to Venture X. Now, Venture X is this building where we are right now, and they very generously are also helping us with that. And of course, that's where Brownsville Herald is located, so it all works out. I would like to introduce someone very important who has been a partner with us on these candidate forums, and that is Edward Yeo, co-president of the League of Women Voters of the RGV, and Edward has some important things to say that will impact all you candidates and all you viewers. Edward?
Thank you, Nedra. My name is Edward Yao, and I am a co-president of the League of Women Voters, Rio Grande Valley. We have partnered with vote411.org to give out nonpartisan voters guides informing voters on the candidates for their local elections. After this meeting, we will send out the invitations to all the candidates so that they may respond accordingly and have that information for all voters within the area. It's vote411.org for all your local election information. Thank you.
And thank you, Edward.
Thank you, Nedra.
Okay, and at this point, I think it's time to reintroduce our moderator, Michael Lemus, of Michael J. Lemus and Associates, and I think you're well known around these parts. And Michael will introduce the candidates and take over the rest, and you're on, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Knerk. I will go ahead and introduce the candidates in Cameron County ballot order.
Job.
And so with us this evening, we
okay,
have Sarah
and
Stapleton Barrera. We have Alex Dominguez.
If you want to come
we
over
have
here where you can
Morgan
watch.
La Mantilla and Salomon Torres. In the initial question, you will have a minute and a half to respond. You have received this question. I will tell you that subsequent questions you will have 60 seconds to answer. And we do have an individual that will be tracking the time. So if I cut you off, no disrespect, but that's just to keep everything fair for all of us. First question, and it's going to go to Sarah. Sarah, besides the people in our community, what do you see as District 27's single biggest asset and our single greatest concern? How would you lead to address this concern?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody who's out there listening. And I appreciate that question. I think that probably our best asset here in Brownsville, Cameron County, is the fact that we are a border community. Where else can you live this life where we're introduced and exposed to this amount of culture, to have opportunities for commerce and for trade? I mean, we all remember growing up here and remember going back and forth to Matamoros and going to Los Portales and eating the cabrito and visiting the mercado and shopping and, all these beautiful memories that we built with our families. And because of this location, we have the opportunity to become the leaders in job creation, to become the leaders in environmental leadership, to become the leaders in bilingual education, to become the leaders in healthcare efforts. We have this opportunity. Unfortunately, I think because we're a border town, that's part of our struggle as well, is the stigma that comes along, the rhetoric that's pushed from the right wing and from other areas of the country that don't understand the rich and wonderful people and culture that we have down here. I was listening to the radio this morning and heard a commercial come on for the governor election, and they were saying our borders are unsafe and there's criminals.
Unfortunately, that's your time, Sarah.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for that response.
Sure.
Alex?
Thanks, Mike. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Alex Dominguez. I'm the state representative for District 37. But honestly, most importantly, I'm a husband and a father. I have a young 3-year-old son, and it's a joy to watch him grow up in the same area that I grew up myself. My family is from the middle part of the valley. I was the first person in my large family born in a hospital. So when we talk about the valley, we talk about Senate District 27, I think the most important asset that we can describe to people why it's so important is this is the only state Senate district that has all 5 modes of transportation. We know about the Deepwater Seaport. We know about our roads, our rail, our airports, but we're also the only one that has a really nice spaceport. And I invite everybody to come drive by Boca Chica Beach and get your little Instagram picture. But what this does is it shows the youth of our area that the future is unlimited. And we're able to do that because of our latitude on the geographic map. I think it will inspire many children to become scientists, perhaps even astronauts or engineers themselves. But more importantly, its location is why SpaceX chose South Texas. I'll tell you, though, what concerns me about South Texas is also the lack of affordable health care for some people. We lead the state in the number of uninsured people. A lot of people, luckily, live close to Mexico and are able to cross the border to buy pharmaceuticals that they might need. I experienced that as a son myself. When I was growing up, we would often go across to Progreso or in Reynosa or sometimes even to Matamoros to buy Pentrasil or whatever medicine. Sometimes we'd go see the dentist there. And if necessary, we would go see a doctor. We see a lot of winter Texans come down for that very reason. But let's face it, we should not have to leave our country to get affordable quality health care. We need to do a better job of training the number of nurses and medical
That
professionals.
is your time. Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for that response. Morgan, you're up. And I can repeat the question if you need to.
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'd like to give my thanks for Futuro RGV for their efforts in educating the voters on the candidates. So thank you, guys. Your question acknowledges that our greatest asset is our people. And I think our next greatest asset is one that supports our people. To me, that's our public school systems, from K through 12 all the way to our institutions of higher learning. My story is a South Texas story. My grandfather didn't finish high school, but he understood the importance of education. So when he started the STAR Scholarship Program, he put college within reach for over 17,000 students. Today, you see industries growing all around us, from space exploration and international trade, healthcare, food production, and modern agriculture. And they need workforce that is skilled, educated, and trained. I think you also asked about our greatest challenge, and our greatest challenge is related to our greatest asset. That's teacher burnout and the learning lag. And these are real problems that we need to address. My agenda involves increasing investment into public schools, increasing salaries of our public school teachers, and supporting programs that allow kids to focus on their studies in schools in order to help them with those challenges they face outside of school. To me, this agenda together will help us back our teachers and support them. So thank you.
Thank you, and that is your time. Thank you for that response. And Salomon, you're up.
Good evening. I'm happy to be with you this evening. My name is Salomon Torres. The best asset that we have are individuals like myself who started with very little in their lives and became a success professionally and in their family lives as well. There are so many people like me who are former migrant workers who put focus on how to improve their communities and are now thriving in different sectors of our economy. Those, to me, are the biggest assets. I will tell you that there is a concern in District 27 that I'm going to be working on as your state senator, and it's actually a statewide concern. And it arises from both the double trauma that we've experienced from COVID and also from the freeze that happened 12 months ago. For COVID, how are we going to prepare our population to be better prepared health-wise to withstand the circumstances of another infection or another health crisis? In the case of preparedness, it could be electrical transmission lines. It could be our natural resources on the coast. It could be flooding situation in our local communities. There are many challenges that we should be working on in a proactive way, not in a reactive way, the way our state has been doing. The voters deserve more than that. They deserve leadership, they deserve hard work, and they deserve collaboration between the parties and between interests. I'm very excited to be running for this seat. I'm very excited for District 27. It's a long district to campaign in, but there's so many wonderful people that I look forward to meeting with. Thank you.
And that's your time. Thank you for your response, Salomon. And now all subsequent questions will have 1 minute for your response. Next up is going to be Alex. And Alex, the question is, what are your qualifications for this position?
Well, let's start with public service. In addition to being the state representative for District 37 for the past 4 years, within that position, I was the only member in the House south of San Antonio who sat on the House Appropriations Committee. So I'm extremely familiar how the state formulates its budget. On top of that, I was recognized by being appointed the vice chair of 2 very important committees. Before that, I was a county commissioner for 4.5 years, representing the people of Cameron County to make sure that their needs were met. As a county commissioner, I had a chance to work with a number of the colonias and people in undeveloped parts of the county, and it really got me time to spend with people and find out what their local needs are. But even before I was an attorney, I was a public school teacher. I taught for 3 years. I taught English, reading, writing, ESL, Texas history, and I also volunteered to teach GED because I know without kids getting a proper foundation, they're really limiting their opportunities in the future. My dad only finished the 4th grade, my mom the 6th. So as a first-generation high school graduate, I know these are the important things for the people in this district.
Thank you for that response, Alex. Morgan, you are next.
So I'm not your typical politician. I am a business leader, and I know what it's like to run a business and to support 1,200 jobs. I'm also very involved in healthcare and have worked within our current healthcare system to allow for our company to supply those 1,200 jobs and their families with healthcare insurance. We have allowed for coverage of 100% for preventative care. We have brought doctors on site for free at no cost to make sure our employees can manage their chronic conditions and take care of themselves and their families. And I have worked with nonprofits on boards and with our family scholarship and worked in a coalition to make sure our communities have the resources they need so that they can grow and keep those strong families and have them grow as well. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Salomon?
I believe that to be an effective state senator, you need to have qualifications at 2 levels, professional and personal. And by personal, I mean what life experiences have you had so that constituents can relate to you when they come to you with all kinds of issues. Not just the big money interests or the big healthcare interests, but what kind of family issues come to you from individuals or families. If you did not raise children, if you did not have your kids in public schools, if you did not deal with health crises in your own family, it's difficult to respond well to constituents. So I would say look at that type of experience among the candidates to see who has a learning curve as far as those types of preparation, that type of preparation. On the professional level, I have 27 years of work in public policy, both in Washington and here in the Valley. Most of it in the Valley, because Washington, you can only take so much. In my case, 7 years. But in the 20 years that I've been here in the Valley, both in the private sector and in the public sector, I'm happy to have brought resources to many communities. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Salomon. Sarah?
Thanks, Michael. First, I've been an attorney for the past 12 years, representing mostly indigent and people that are forgotten and lost in the system. And what I've seen with my boots on the ground day in and day out in this courtroom right down the road here is that how good laws can really help people, but how bad laws can ruin lives and ruin families. We've all encountered troublesome situations in our life. I used to be a single mom, and trying to afford Pampers was a struggle at one point in my life. With that being said, there has never been a female senator out of this district. And even more so, there's never been a mother representation out of this district. And those voices need to be heard. And for so long, they've been forgotten.
Thank you for your response. And we're on to the next question. And this is going to start with Morgan, and we'll move on to the rest of the candidates. The question is, what would you have supported SB 1 passed by the last session of the Texas legislature regarding changes to the voting law?
I would not have supported it. I would have voted against it. I believe, no, actually it does. It violates the Voting Rights Act and the American with Disabilities Act. And it's a solution in search of a problem that doesn't exist. You know, the right to vote is integral and is necessary for our democratic system. I would not have voted for it. I would fight for our voting rights because those voting rights are sacred to our system and this community.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon?
I would not have voted for that law. I would have adamantly fought against that law. That law sends mixed signals to our population in Texas and in District 27. It tells people, we're going to scrutinize you. We're going to scrutinize you because you want to exercise a fundamental right in our country and in our democracy. That is completely shameful that Texas would allow that type of extra scrutiny to be exercised for the sake of additional scrutiny, which is what it is. It's going to discourage participation. It mixes bad signals to our youth, to immigrants who become naturalized citizens so they can vote. That kind of law is completely outdated, and it should not have been passed. And the leadership should take another look at what kind of impact it's going to be having in these upcoming elections. As a senator, I would be very much in favor of working with the other party to assess how exactly they want to address whatever fraud concerns they have. If they are real concerns, then let's work on it on a bipartisan way. If not, it's important that we do not have that kind of law. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Sarah?
Yeah, for the sake of sounding too blunt, it's a racist law, right? What we know is that it discourages our Latinos and our Black population and our underserved communities from voting. I mean, let's take a look around our community. We still have people that don't have transportation, don't have cars, don't have vehicles, don't even have access to the public buses because they're in too rural of a situation. We have people that can't access internet. So to implement this sort of law is nothing more than a means to chop down on our rights, right? I mean, women have only had the right to vote for 100 years. That's it. And I feel like this is sort of a rollback. I mean, we talk about moving forward and progressing and making things better. This is a huge step back for our voting rights. So I certainly disagree.
Thank you for your response, Sarah. Alex?
Well, not only would I vote against it, I actually did vote against it every single time that it was before us on the House floor. And the reason why is that there are many problems with the bill. I'm not going to say that our election system has been perfect in the past. Clearly, we can always make improvements. But this bill was specifically targeting large counties with populations of color. Harris County, because of the COVID crisis, innovated in having drive-through voting, where people still showed their ID. They did all the normal things you would do in a polling place. But by providing this drive-through system for people to vote, they really increased the number of people that were able to work, that able to vote, because some people in Harris County have to work 2 part-time jobs. So part of SB 1 is it outlaws this from happening. Clearly, this bill was specifically to reduce the number of Democratic votes by people of color. I could speak on this topic for hours, and I have. Thankfully, with some good negotiation, we were able to make the bill a little bit less bad, but have no doubts, this is a terrible bill.
That is your time. Thank you for that response, Alex. We're moving on to our next question. Salomon, you would be the first to respond. And the question is, how would you have voted on the legislation restricting abortions that was recently passed by the legislature in the last session?
A woman's right to choose an abortion or no abortion is fundamental. That's a right that needs to be preserved. Roe versus Wade is the law of the land, and we must abide by that. So women's right to choose that procedure or not definitely needs to be preserved and protected. As a state senator, I definitely would work with the other party to see how do we invest in educational resources so that health care access is increased for women that are facing that crisis situation in their lives. As we know, an unwanted pregnancy or an unplanned pregnancy can be a crisis for a family, for, of course, the woman first, but it's a crisis that needs support. The woman needs support, the family needs support, and if the state doesn't invest in the centers that are providing access to information, that's really negligence on our part to do what we can so that we help women deal with that potentially life-changing situation.
Thank you for your response, Salomon. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the legislator failed us. What bigger failure could we have than implementing this law that really can ruin a woman's life? We have people now, for the past 4 months, what's have to happen is people down here in the valley especially, a lot of us don't have means to fly to another state or whatever it may be. Look, it doesn't matter if you love abortion, hate abortion, or somewhere in the middle, right? What matters is everybody's got their right to feel the way they want to feel about it, so let's grant everybody that dignity. And this whole idea of placing a $10,000 bounty, and I call it a bounty because that's what it is, a bounty on women's heads for seeking care is an abomination, ludicrous. I mean, just very, very sad to me.
That is your time. Thank you, Sarah. Alex?
I did vote against SB 8, and every single time that such a bill has come up before me, I voted against it. The reason why is I believe it's a law that's well settled by our Supreme Court system. There's no need to readdress it. It was a novel formula to try to shift the burden away from targeting a pregnant mother to all those people that would help her try to achieve the medical needs that she chooses along with her doctor. I don't think legislators have any business in the bedroom, and I don't think that we have any business being inside somebody's medical room with their doctor. This bill, combined with SB 1, has resulted in a number of companies reducing their workforce in the state of Texas and reducing their investment in the state of Texas. Purely as a policy point of view, they should have thought about that in the Senate. We voted against it in the House. I would vote against it again. In addition, I would counsel those senators and possibly House members that there must be a better way of doing things. Let's take the politics out of medical decisions. It's a fundamental right for a person to decide what to do with their reproductive organs, and that's what needs to happen.
Thank you for your response, Alex. Morgan?
So I would have voted against SB 8, and SB 8 is currently being fought in the Texas Supreme Court. It is one of the most extreme laws on this cause in the country, and it creates vigilantes that follow women in their most vulnerable state, and it allows people to sue even though they have no standing. It also prevents abortions before women even know that they are pregnant. I am one of 5 daughters, and even my father learned we need to respect and support a woman's autonomy, a woman's intelligence, and a woman's right to make her own decisions, especially when it comes to healthcare. We need to make sure that healthcare is available to everyone for all situations, and that women have the facts that they need when they need them. The last thing we need, and the last thing we need especially in this district, is to limit healthcare to anyone, especially women, and when they are their most vulnerable and are at a situation where they're trying to make a hard decision. They need people they can trust, that they can talk to, that allow them to give them the facts and what their options are. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. We're going to shift on to the next question, and Sarah will be the first to respond. If you're not the eventual primary winner, do you commit to support and campaign for the eventual nominee of your party?
There are some things that are extremely important to me. First of all, transparency in the government. Term limits is extremely important to me. I feel like without transparency in the government and without term limits and without this closing of loopholes that allow our leaders to get rich off of the constituents, I can support a candidate that is aligned with my beliefs in that, because it's not until we can handle those matters till we can make substantial change with healthcare, with education. But if we have a politician whose pockets are being lined by special interest groups all over the state, then there's no way that I can consciously support that person. But if we have someone that is not taking money from all these corporate entities that are trying to buy them, then absolutely count me in.
Thank you, Sarah. Alex?
I'm committed to making sure that we have the vote turnout in November to make sure that we are electing Democratic candidates all over the state. I've made those commitments to those candidates that are running statewide. I've made that commitment to people that are running in my House district. I think it's very important. In addition, we have local candidates that are running for local office at the county level. We need to make sure that they also have a fair shake to win in November. I really believe in the values of the Democratic Party. I'm unwavering in that. I do share some of Sarah's concerns. Will the candidate that gets this nomination be somebody that upholds the democratic values? If they can prove that to me, then they have my full support.
Thank you for your response, Alex. Morgan?
My response is short. Yes, I will support whoever the primary candidate is for this party. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon?
I will be laying out during this very short campaign what priorities I have for District 27. And if the winning candidate is on board to work for those priorities, then I would be happy to work with that candidate for a victory in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Salomon. Moving on and shifting gears to the next questions. This will be for Alex to respond first. The question is, last February, Texas had a winter freeze, and most of the state, with the exception of El Paso, lost power. We are not sure we are ready for another freeze. As a state senator, what have you done, and what more can be done to assure our electrical grid is ready for another winter freeze? Alex.
Just last March in the House Appropriations Committee, I was supposed to get a chance to question those members of ERCOT and the PUC. A number of them resigned the night before so they wouldn't have to face those tough questions. Because as a senator, we have oversight over all the agencies within the state. We control many of the dollars that fund their agencies. I would continue to force these investigations, and I would call for them even in a special session. I fear that we are not prepared for another hard freeze like the one that we had 1 year ago. The reason why I hear this is that PUC has already stated they are understaffed and don't have enough people to do the things that need to be done. I also don't think that we did enough to weatherize our natural gas production to get that natural gas to those providers. There's a lot more that needs to happen that does not need the lip service of politicians running for re-election. What we need to do is just be honest brokers with the American people and those here in Texas. Our tax dollars are at work, and it's critical that we don't lose power again in the winter or the summer.
That's your time. Thank you for the response, Alex. Morgan?
So some improvements have been made, but not enough. We need to make sure that there's accountability and oversight for the weatherization of the power plants. We also need to make sure that the natural gas companies are weatherizing and preparing for the next freeze, because without that weatherization and without that preparation, those natural gas plants will freeze again, and we will have the same situation where we can't get power to those power plants and to our consumers. We also need to make sure that there is emergency planning in place and that we understand what the emergency protocols are and what the priorities are during those situations. Because it's not a question of if there's another freeze, it's a question of when. And we need to make sure we're prepared for it and we have contingencies in place should it ever happen again. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon?
There are about 3 reforms that I would recommend as a state senator. Number one, the legislation that the legislature passed as an attempt to address this crisis has loopholes. So those loopholes have to be closed so that the natural gas providers and other parties to this system of the electrical grid system need to not take advantage of loopholes in order not to comply with the winterization of their equipment or supply lines. Number two, the structure of how we are like the Lone Ranger in the U.S. as far as providing electricity to our Texans. Texas is on its own and does not coordinate provision of electricity with other states. That structure needs to be revisited, especially as our urban areas grow and as we grow on the border with our economy. And third, there's a tremendous amount of new oversight that I would recommend as a senator. I think the legislature also needs to look at itself in the mirror, at what additional oversight it could have done since 2011 when we were forewarned.
That's your
Thank you.
time, Salomon. Thank you for the response. Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, let's get real, right? We can talk about what should happen and how it should happen and how it should work, but it comes down to one thing, and I think we all know what it is. It comes down to money, right? When we have our state legislators and Governor Abbott, who's appropriating funds to building a $25 million 2-mile border barrier, then that's not a useful appropriation of funds, right? We've got to have leaders in there that are not grandstanding for their own political agendas and allocate money to where it actually belongs. And it belongs so we don't have people hiding in their tents, starting fires in their homes to try to not catch hypothermia. We were out for 5 days at my house with 3 little kids. So you better believe that I will be watching where these funds are going, because they certainly have not gone to fix these problems.
Thank you, Sarah. Moving on to the next question. Morgan, you will start. And the question is, our region has continuous problems with flooding in smaller towns and lower income areas that severely impact the lives of the members of those communities. If elected, how will you work to fix these issues?
Yeah, so Senators Lucio and Hinojosa have been leaders on this issue. And we've made significant investments in the state flood investment infrastructure fund. However, we have a fund, but not a plan. And our coastal communities need to be resilient because we are very much at risk to extreme weather situations, hurricanes, and flooding. This is a situation that's gone on for a very long time, and we need to start taking actions now to get and to have those improvements made. We need to work together because it's a regional issue, and we need to be collaborative. We'll work to bring experts down to work with our local stakeholders to make sure we have a plan in place and take it to TxDOT and the Texas Water Board. Also make sure that we have people in place that can help train our locals to apply for grant funding and make sure that we get the funding as soon as possible, but not just get the funding, but put it to work right away with a plan that is regional, that can affect the entire area and help with our flooding and drainage situation.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon?
The state of Texas is very good about proposing propositions for new bond issuances when very large stakes are involved as far as transportation or large corporate interests that are backing those bonds. This is the approach that I would propose as a state senator. The smallest communities, the most rural communities that will never accumulate enough capital or funds in order to make local flooding improvements, those are the ones we need to help with a brand new bond issuance from the state of Texas. It needs the local decision makers, the county judges, the county commissioners, local city officials, they're the best decision makers for where the improvements need to be made. We need to follow the example of the federal government as far as having a rescue plan for our communities. We should not wait for the next hurricane to teach us a really bad lesson about why we should have acted sooner. Many times we invest in large arteries and how we move water out of the whole region, but we need to put the same effort into colonias and into local areas that are going to be in deep trouble with the flood.
Thank you for your response, Salomon. Sarah?
Yeah, funding is not going to be an issue, right? We all know that Biden is giving out this infrastructure money with the Build Better Back plan. So they'll be doling out billions of dollars. But the risky part is it's up to our state legislators to get the money to where it actually belongs. And if we have state leaders that are saying, hey, well, you know, I've got this CEO out of Dallas who did me a favor, or I've got, you know, this company out of wherever who did me a favor, do we think that they're going to allocate the funding that we need here in South Texas for infrastructure? there's no way. They're bought out. We're bought out, and our problems never stop. My good friend lives down the road here on Ramireño Street, and every time it rains, you're up to your knees. School buses can't go through. There are 2 children living in that neighborhood with disabilities, and they can't get on those buses to go to school. And unfortunately, we have candidates that are more interested in building a second bridge to the island. Let's put the money where it belongs, but we can't do that if our leaders are sold out.
Thank you for your response, Sarah. Alex?
When I was a county commissioner, we saw what happens when a very strong storm can pour 4 to 6 inches of rain overnight. When this happened as a county commissioner, I saw it happen in other precincts. It didn't happen in mine. But when I got elected to the state house, as a freshman, I fought hard in the Natural Resources Committee to pass the first of its kind Cameron County Flood Control District bill, allowing the people of Cameron County to invest, to be able to solve their own problems. I think we need to do more of that as a regional model. Hidalgo County has their own flood control authority. It's also their commissioner's court. I think that we need to have a Texas Water Development Board project to encompass the entire region, not just these 2, but also Willacy, Starr, and Kennedy County as well. If elected to be your state senator, I will request that I be placed on the Natural Resources Senate Committee. I think in that way, with my local expertise and experience, we can develop a plan here with our engineers who already know this area, those that already work in our drainage projects. And that's how we can fix this problem here in South Texas.
Thank you for that response, Alex. We're going to go ahead and shift on to the next question. Salomon, you'll be starting. And the question is as follows. Texas leads the nation with the highest uninsured rates. I believe we referenced it earlier today, at approximately 19% and growing. Due to the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, many had pointed to Medicaid expansion as a way for Texas to increase health insurance coverage for Texans, reduce state spending, and draw down at least $5 billion in federal dollars to the state. Do you support Medicaid expansion? If so, why? And if not, why not? Salomon.
I would fight for Medicaid expansion in Texas. It is a no-brainer. It is cost-effective. It saves money in the long run when individuals and families are healthier because they have access to preventive health care. They're going to visit the clinics and the hospitals less for treatment, which is where our emphasis should be. It should be on prevention. But you can't tell a family to take actions to prevent if you don't give them the ability to have access to primary doctors, to individuals, perhaps specialists that they need to see for whatever health conditions their children are facing. Medicaid expansion for adults is extremely important. We have waited way too long. We've put aside so many federal dollars over the years that we've avoided or we've denied Medicaid expansion in Texas. Other states are benefiting from this horrible decision by the state, and I would work very, very actively in order to promote and pass Medicaid expansion.
Thank you for that response, Salomon. Sarah, you're up.
Yeah, look, we have the highest uninsured rates in the whole state. We're, I think, at 37% of our people are uninsured, which is why you can go down the street any given Saturday and see people having chicken plate sales, why you can pull up Facebook and see GoFundMe's being shared. The fact that we're having to rely on GoFundMe's and chicken plates to pay for our doctor's visits or for our insulin or so our grandpa can go see his specialist is mind-blowing. The fact that we're 2022 and here we are. I tell the story of Rosa Diaz because I will never forget when she told her daughter after a party one evening, "Mijita, I don't feel good. I'm going to lay on the couch." Daughter says, "Mom, let's go to the doctor. You're not looking good." Rosa Diaz died on that couch that morning. There was no tomorrow for Rosa Diaz. We all know a Rosa Diaz, and one is too many. This has to change, and this has to change now, or there'll be nobody left to protect.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Alex?
Back in the 86 general session, Democrats pushed a bill to accept Medicaid dollars, expand Medicaid. It didn't even get a hearing. This past year, Representative Johnson offered an identical bill. I was a co-author of that bill. We were able to get many Republicans to sign on to that bill. But again, we couldn't get that bill to the floor. This is an issue that's one about political will. And this is where the parties differentiate themselves. I believe that it's part of basic government to make sure that people are healthy, that our society works, and that people are cared for with their most basic of needs, especially when the funds are going to be federal in nature, not our state taxpayer dollars. I would support Medicaid expansion now and tomorrow and the day after that. And I'll continue to work with my Republican colleagues and the Lieutenant Governor to push this bill. Even if it needs to appeal to their basic decency or their own religion, I believe it's a good Christian thing to do to make sure that people are healthy and protected.
Thank you for that response, Alex. Morgan, you're up.
I have worked in the healthcare system, and I work with my family business to provide healthcare benefits to 1,200 employees and their families. And I understand how difficult it is for small businesses to take on that cost and supply their employees with healthcare. We have a disproportionate number of uninsured individuals here in our communities, and many of those people work. But without affordable health care, what happens is that they don't go to work because they're sick, or they do go to work and they take the risk of infecting others. What we need to support Medicaid expansion, and we need to have that happen quickly. There are 39 other states in this country that have passed Medicaid expansion, and those include both Democrat and Republican states. Affordable health care creates stronger families and strengthens economies, and we need that right away. Thank you.
Thank you for your response, Morgan. We're going to move on to the next question. Sarah, you'll be taking the question first. The question is as follows. COVID shed a giant spotlight on the need to reach the last mile in broadband coverage in the Rio Grande Valley. While this last session, the Texas legislature passed legislation to create a statewide broadband office, although it did not allocate any resources to local communities to expand access to broadband or to educate communities. What more do you pledge to do to make high-speed internet available to all?
Yeah, I mean, this needs to be funded by the infrastructure money that we're getting from Biden, right? We live in a community where we have a good number of people that are rural. You know, I've got 3 kids, and I did the whole Zoom classroom thing for the year of 2020 and 2021, and it's extremely difficult. You know, when you have spotty service and, you know, more importantly, when you've got 3 kids and you only have 1 tablet. There's a lot that we can do to further this issue and make it better. I mean, if we don't, what we're going to see is this huge gap in our children's educations. Our 1st and 2nd graders are having trouble reading because of this year and a half that we missed. People weren't able to get to their jobs because they had to stay home and put their children on the Zooms. And then this whole issue of children that live in the colonias and in these rural areas just completely losing this year and a half.
That's your time, Sarah.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Alex?
As a House member this last session, I was a co-author of HB 5, which expanded the access to broadband and really putting Texas at the lead to make sure that this utility is available to all. And that's really what we need to be talking about. We can't think of broadband as a service. We can't think of it as a luxury just to watch YouTube. It's actually a utility, just like electricity, just like water. It's part of our life, it's part of our jobs, it's part of our schools. In many ways, it's also part of our medical treatment as well. Not only do we need to encourage investment at the state level, we need to encourage our private partners. Thankfully, we have very, very good companies like AEP that's going to be converting much of their utility lines to be able to spread the access to broadband throughout the entire state, especially rural areas. We still need to do more to bring fiber down here to South Texas. We have a couple of lines that are on their way, but we need to do more. And more importantly, we need to make sure that people have the tools to access it at an affordable rate. And that's where I think Texas should really help out those that are low-income providers, low-income homes, so that they can afford broadband too.
That is your time, Alex. Thank you for your response. Morgan?
Modern broadband is imperative for life today. It's needed for telehealth, telemedicine, remote education, distance learning, commerce, and our public health systems. We need to close the digital divide here in South Texas. This needs to be a federal and state responsibility, and we know we have to fight for every dollar for South Texas. And I will pledge to work with our congressional delegation to prioritize broadband as infrastructure investment and fund programs starting with our school systems and our local school districts to ensure every student has full access, so we don't have another situation like this again. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon?
During the first phase of COVID, our home with 4 kids became a mini community college where you had to put 2 kids over here, 2 over here. You had to invest in new routers. You have to invest in upgraded internet service. Yes, the schools provided the devices, but here are families having to turn into IT experts just so that children could learn. We know of families that couldn't afford those kinds of enhancements. And so here we were forcing them to drive to a campus parking lot so they could have access to broadband and the internet. That is not the way to teach our children how to learn and to incentivize them to stay focused on learning. That is completely unacceptable situation. As a state senator, I would make this a priority to see how do we equalize access to broadband and the internet. We also should get the big corporate world involved that's investing in the Rio Grande Valley, such as SpaceX. I think they would be alarmed if they saw how spotty coverage is in our rural areas right here in their backyard.
Thank you for your response, Salomon. And we're on to our last question before our closing remarks. And Alex will take the last question. And the question is as follows. We are seeing an unprecedented amount of Texas educators leaving the profession. Many are citing low pay, mediocre pension benefits, and the feeling of being undervalued. If elected, how would you address the issues that the profession is currently facing? Alex.
You know, my wife's an educator, so I hear every day what happens on school campuses throughout the entire valley. A number of my friends themselves are educators or their spouses are educators. So I hear not just about the burnout, but the underappreciation of the risk that our educators put out every single day. We saw just a few months ago people battling about these. When schools wanted students to wear masks and people were throwing big fits as if they were trying to take away their constitutional rights. We need to respect our teachers. When we passed HB 3 back in the 86 session, that was to give teachers greater pay and all educators, whether they were cafeteria workers or bus drivers, because we need to make public education our priority. I don't do this just because my wife's an educator and because 6 of my brothers and sisters are educators too. I've been in that classroom. There's no greater joy or more difficult job in Texas than being an educator in Texas. And we need to make sure that people know that our educators, they're our heroes.
Thank you for your response, Alex. Morgan?
We need to do much, much more when it comes to supporting our teachers. We need to raise their salaries. We need to make sure that they have our support and they understand that we are behind them 100%. So many of our teachers are paying for supplies out of their own pocket because our schools aren't funded enough. We need to make sure that that stops and that teachers are no longer feeling the need to do that. We also need to make sure that they feel safe and that their interests are being heard and understood by the community and by those in the state legislature. There is a lot more we can do to support our teachers, and one of the main things is to sit down and listen to them and make sure they're being heard and their interests are being brought to the state legislature, and we are funding them and raising their salaries. For too long, Texas has ignored the pipeline for teachers, and we need to reallocate and readjust there because that shortage of teachers is going to continue because there is no more in the pipeline coming out to take on those jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon.
We know that right now, as we speak, schools are juggling staff as much as they can with absences due to illness or access or contact with individuals who have been infected with COVID. Teachers, substitutes, they are all being affected in the most dramatic way by this crisis that we have in the United States and here in Texas. We need to, at the beginning of the legislative session, we need to hear from the teachers. We need to hear from them as to what can we do to retain them in teaching in their school district. We need to have a reputation in District 27 that these communities are the place to be to teach. What do we do to help them enhance their skills? If they want to advance in their careers in teaching or in administration, what do we do as an incentive in order to keep them here versus going into other sectors where they could get paid better and perhaps leave teaching forever. And that would be a tragedy as we see our growing population.
Thank you for your response, Salomon. And so at this time, we have a closing statement. Oh, I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't want to jump the gun. So Sarah, yes, same question.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, look, we all know that teachers are overworked and underpaid. I don't think anybody would say otherwise. I used to be a teacher, and it was the hardest job of my life. But what we're not talking about, and what we should be talking about, is how to solve the problem. And look, as long as we're giving millions of dollars on vouchers to schools, charter schools, that do not accept every student, that are picky and choosy with who they let in, then we're never going to get there. That's where we start. We can't support a system that only allows the cream of the crop or the brightest of the bright or whatever it is they look for into these systems. We have got to support our public school system and make sure that our funds are allocated to our public school system. Back in 2020, I called Governor Abbott, yelled and screamed, said we need to raise teacher pay to $60,000 for brand new teachers and then higher rates for the longer you've been there. And that needs to happen yesterday. Because we're right, teachers are underpaid. They have no cost of living adjustment when they retire.
That's your time, Sarah.
Thanks,
And my
Michael.
apologies for skipping you.
No problem.
Thank you all for your responses. We're now on to closing statements. You have 1 minute. And continuing with ballot order, Morgan, you are up first.
Thank you again for the opportunity to join tonight. As I travel through our district and talk with our neighbors, they are frustrated with the arguing and the gridlock. They want to see things to get done. And that's what my campaign brings. I'm a candidate who has business experience, who knows what it takes to make payroll and support jobs. I'm a candidate who's worked in our healthcare system and helped our company cover preventive care 100%, bring doctors to help our employees manage chronic diseases, and eliminate hidden fees and surprise billing. The result is better care and lower premiums. I'm not your typical politician. I know how to get things done. And as my grandfather taught me when he established the STAR Scholarship Program, when you give us the opportunity, we'll show you what we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. Salomon?
Lo que les voy a pedir al votante cuando evalúen los candidatos para este puesto importante de senador estatal para el Distrito 27, es importante que evalúen no solamente qué preparación tenemos profesional, pero qué preparación tenemos de vida. O sea, creamos nuestro camino con la experiencia que hemos tenido, nos han regalado alguna herencia, algún familiar, o hemos levantado nuestro propio éxito por nuestra labor. Yo soy ese tipo de persona, típico historia de inmigrante que llegó al éxito con la educación, que va a ser una de mis prioridades en Austin. Le pido que evalúen al candidato que va a poder comunicarse bien con ustedes y escuchar y entender las necesidades del pueblo, de la media clase, de la clase de bajos recursos, de los dueños de pequeños negocios. Les exijo que por favor evalúen a todos los candidatos con esos tipos de factores. Gracias.
Thank you, Salomon. Sarah?
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, look, when I started this journey back in 2020 against the second most senior senator with millions of dollars, people thought I was a little crazy. You know, I had a 3-month-old baby that I strapped to my front and was going to fundraisers and to block parties and whatever else it was. But after that run, I can't tell you how many young women approached me and said, you know what, we watched that race, and because of that, I'm running for school board. Because of that, I'm gonna run for mayor of my town. And there is nothing to me more important than this fire that was ignited here in South Texas that I'm so proud to be part of. We can make real change when we have real people in there just doing what they think is right. And I feel like what I'm doing is right, and I hope to make everyone proud.
Thank you, Sarah, for that. And Alex, you're up.
Representing Senate District 27 is incredibly important. It's a district of over 900,000 people. It's larger than a congressional district. No one can replace Senator Lucio. The experience that he had for 30 years is vast. I think the next senator should be somebody that can pick up that ball, though, and keep going with it with his next session. I'm unapologetically a Democrat. But even saying that, on the House floor, I was able to pass almost more bills than most other Democrats in the House. Had a very good session. But the reason why I did that is I knew how to work with colleagues of both sides. Because when we're up there, we need to be a Texan first. We need to be a senator who remembers the people of this district. That's why I pledge to you that I will always be available to you, as I have been as your House district representative. I think a good senator is somebody that has a public service resume, which I have. I was a board member for CASA, which helps kids in the foster care system. I was your county commissioner before that. You don't earn a lot of money as a senator. You need to do it because you have heart.
That's your time. Thank you so much for your response, Alex. I want to thank all the individuals that are watching us on Facebook Live. Please continue to share so folks can watch it from now up until Election Day. Speaking of Election Day, early voting for this particular race is Monday, February 14th through February 25th, and Election Day is Tuesday, March 1st. So please exercise your right to vote and vote. I want to thank Futuro RGV, and I'm going to go through the list of District 27 candidates one last time. We have Sarah Stapleton Barrera, Alex Dominguez, Morgan Lamantilla, and Salomon Torres. Thank you so much for being with us this evening, and I'm going to pass it along to Dr. Knirk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael.
You're welcome.
And thank you to all of our candidates for helping our voters know who you are, what you stand for, and what you are going to try to do for them. And I want to say also that Futura RGV is hosting a number of these candidate forums that are available to all the viewers out there at federal, state, and some local elections. Go to the Futura RGV Facebook page or our website, and you can watch these forums anytime, anywhere that you have internet access, at your own time, at your own pleasure. And so with that, I would like to say that our Futura RGV message today to all of you viewers out there, be an informed voter. Exercise your duty, exercise your right, and exercise your privilege to vote to keep a strong democracy. And with that, I thank you all, and good night.